The launch of the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, or UNGPs, has focused a lot of attention lately on the extent of businesses' responsibility and obligations vis-a-vis human rights. Companies can have both a positive and negative impact on people, but what is their responsibility specifically with respect to human rights? According to the UNGPs, businesses have a corporate responsibility to respect human rights. Respect for human rights requires that businesses implement the UNGPs to avoid and address any adverse human rights impact with which they're involved. Sounds simple enough, but what does this mean in practical terms? How do businesses go about satisfactorily demonstrating their commitment to respecting human rights? Let's talk about the UNGPs and what businesses need to do in order to properly implement them, with particular emphasis on human rights due diligence. And if you find this video useful, please don't forget to give us a like before you leave. The UNGPs were unanimously approved by the United Nations Human Rights Council and serve as an international norm of expected business conduct that apply to all businesses, regardless of size. According to the UNGPs, in order to both know and show that they respect human rights, business needs to demonstrate the following three things. First, they need to have a formal policy or commitment in place to respect human rights. Now, this doesn't need to be a 10-page charter outlining all the human rights that the organization will respect, but it should be aligned to, or refer to at least, relevant international instruments like the UN Declaration on Human Rights. Secondly, they need to have a human rights due diligence process in place, which is not just a one-off, but which is conducted on an ongoing basis. And third, they need to have processes or mechanisms which enables the remediation of business-related human rights harms. And if you're interested in learning more about this topic, please check out our video on grievance mechanisms, and I'll leave a link in the description box below. Of these three elements, businesses sometimes struggle the most with the concept of due diligence. Human rights due diligence needs to cover all the different types of impacts that might cause conflict with internationally recognized human rights. This includes the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and its two optional protocols, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Using these references as guides, the identification of actual and potential impacts on human rights needs to include all the impacts that the business causes directly, the impacts that the business contributes to, as well as the impacts that are directly linked to the business's operations, its products or services, and/or its relationships. And this focus on impacts in business relationships and its supply chain and other business relationships is an integral, if often overlooked, part of human rights due diligence. As stated in the UNGPs, actual and potential human rights impacts need to be avoided and addressed by conducting an effective human rights due diligence process. A proper human rights due diligence process should include the following four key steps. Step 1. Identifying and assessing human rights impacts. And while there's no single or prescribed methodology by the UNGPs used to identify human rights risks, what is essential is that all actual and potential adverse human rights impacts of both the business itself and its associated relationships are taken into account. Now, this might involve integrating human rights into existing risk identification processes, or it could be a standalone assessment that focuses exclusively on human rights. What's common to most approaches is that they tend to involve research and dialogue both internally and externally, and should be based on the foundational human rights instruments that we mentioned previously. Other actions at this stage might involve setting up a screening process, or for new or existing suppliers, consulting with contracted workers about their working conditions, and gaining a better understanding of the organization's supply chain beyond its Tier 1 suppliers. All these actions should result in a list of actual and potential human rights risks that could be linked to the business. In step 2, we focus on integrating the findings. In this step, the business needs to respond and act upon the findings of the impact assessment. This may involve integrating relevant policies, procedures, and practices within specific operations right across the business, such as developing human rights awareness program for your procurement department to allow them to better identify human rights risks, setting out internal training requirements within your human resources department, or instituting new incident reporting requirements or to mitigate human rights risk as part of your health and safety operations, and so on. And this takes us to step 3. Step 3 is all about tracking and monitoring. Tracking and monitoring of the effectiveness of responses should be a part of an ongoing process to verify whether adverse human rights impacts are being effectively addressed. In this step, you might carry out internal audit of your supplier screening processes, or ensure that there are proper oversight of the complaints process, and that the number and the nature of the complaints are regularly reported to top management for their action. While many of these processes may be internal, it's important also to involve affected rights holders and other stakeholders externally when monitoring effectiveness. And finally, on step 4, on communicating and reporting. Information about your due diligence process and impact should be publicly communicated in ways that are accessible, that provide relevant information, and don't pose risks to rights holders or others such as human rights defenders, journalists, or trade unionists. Examples of communications might include a public response to allegations that a company might be facing, the publishing of a modern slavery statement such as those required in jurisdictions like the UK and Australia, and may also include formal or informal dialogue with stakeholders in ways that help to enhance accountability. In summary, ensuring that your organization has an effective and ongoing human rights due diligence process in place is an important way to demonstrate respect for human rights according to the UNGPs. Following these practical steps for due diligence that we've covered here will enable your organization to both know and show that it takes its obligations towards upholding human rights seriously, and help to safeguard it against potential human rights risks. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it useful, please take a moment to give us a like or consider subscribing to our channel so that we know that these videos are appreciated and that the work we put into producing them is worthwhile. And please continue to check out our YouTube channel for more useful tips and insights on important sustainability topics. Thank you.